You're listening to the Building Psychological Strength podcast, Professional Edition. My name is April Seifert. Not only am I a doctoral level psychologist, but I've been a successful entrepreneur for a number of years and have learned firsthand that building psychological strength can have a direct impact on your professional success. In this Friday edition of the podcast, I'll offer you tools, tips, tricks, and information to help you become stronger, more resilient, and more successful. Let's get to it. Malcolm Gladwell said, "The visionary starts with a clean sheet of paper and reimagines the world." Happy Friday, friends. I'm so happy you're here. You have made it to the end of the week, and we are ending on such a great note. This episode is my special gift to you. This episode is my gift to those of you who are wearing so many hats in whatever role it is that, or whatever, professional setting you're in, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are employed in a more traditional corporate job. This is my gift to you if you are wearing multiple hats and you're exhausted about it. If you are both an individual contributor and a manager, if you are an individual contributor, a manager, and a leader / visionary, and you're finding it difficult to wear all of those hats and do it well, this episode is my gift to you. This week, we're actually going to air an interview. It's an interview with a man that I met just through my network, and he specializes in helping people step into visionary leadership roles through navigating the complexity that can happen when we're wearing multiple hats. He talked to me about his framework for understanding what he calls the exhausted corporate hero. And it just resonated. It sounded so much like experiences that I found myself in, particularly as I was navigating a jump in my career. So moving from individual contributor to a more leadership strategic role, I definitely felt the pain and the pinch that he talks about in his book and in this model. So I'm going to shut up here and I'm going to air that interview because this is Friday. We're short and sweet and to the point on Fridays. I'm really excited for you all to meet Mark Heydt. Mark Heydt, I am so excited that you're here for this episode of the podcast because when we first met, we had a great conversation about some of the work that you do. And all I could think of was how much it resonated with so many experiences I've had in my professional career. So thank you so much for being here to go over all of this with us.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this all month. I'm really excited to sit down and chat.
Yay. So we have a similar background. We both worked for a large corporate employer in the United States, a similar one. And so we kind of bonded on that experience. And you really took all of the amazing work that you did in your, more traditional career and have kind of taken it on the road and done your own independent thing. Can you give us a little overview?
Yeah, for 20 years, I spent time in corporate America, a lot in Fortune 500 companies, both within kind of the business side, but also in the HR world. The last few companies, I've been building a lot of leadership development programs, executive coaching programs internally, talent planning and talent succession. And through that process, really fallen in love with how do we help people truly get to the leadership levels that they need to get to be successful. And so went out on my own and started my company Game Plan Leader because every leader needs a game plan. And it's just been so much fun ever since.
I love it. That's so great. And what really struck me as we were talking, first of all, you drew a Venn diagram, which that is a person after my own heart. The little analytical person in me was cheering and jumping up and down and doing cartwheels. But this particular Venn diagram really hit me hard because it encapsulates so perfectly the experience that so many of us have had in our career. Can you give us sort of the lay of the land of this Venn diagram of the corporate exhausted hero?
Yeah, the corporate exhausted hero model. I just drew it on the back of a napkin so many times and it was hitting people like you said, April. And so I just wrote a book, Rescuing the Corporate Exhausted Hero, which people can find out there and learn more about it. But the quick summary of it is when you think about the roles back in the Henry Ford days, there was an individual contributor, a manager, and a leader. And I really saw those as three different circles of work that were independent of themselves. The individual, they turned the wrench. The manager, they had the checklist and made sure the shift happened. And the leaders started thinking up more and more innovative things to happen. And those were three very separate jobs. And today, you've been in corporate America, those jobs are overlapping more and more. And now as they overlap, they're creating even more jobs. There's 7 different jobs on this new model. And one of them is the corporate exhausted hero. It is where all three are overlapping. That person who is a great individual contributor, we promoted them to manager. So now they manage their team and try to keep them happy. And then also we're asking them to be strategic as well. And so they're doing that in their spare time and they're becoming a leader. And so based off that, they're doing all three jobs, but they're probably not doing any of them well because they're just plain exhausted.
I feel like we should all just take a deep breath and a moment of silence for that, because I know that landed with everyone listening to this. I think we can all think of a time where we have at least inhabited 2 of those circles in that Venn diagram at the same time, if not all 3. It's really difficult to be in corporate America these days with the types of challenges that we face, with the types of problems. I was reading a book recently. I think it was the book Range, Why Generalists Excel in a Specialized World, something like that. That's probably 90% right, the title of the book. Anyway, and they talked about how the problems that we solve these days, they're not clear and they're not black and white and they're not as easy and there's not a necessarily perfect right answer. And I think some of that breeds this complexity that you're talking about, where now we're wearing all these hats and we're trying to do it all. And exhausted is the right word for it. It's so hard to inhabit all of that.
I think there's this belief that there's this expectation that we need to wear all of these hats. And through that, we're exhausted. It's amazing how many times I've used this Venn diagram when I sit down with a boss and a VP or a director in an organization and a CEO. And the director says, well, this is what's expected of me. And their boss says, no, I don't need you to do this. But that clarity is not happening. They're not having those conversations. Other times I'm just meeting with a vice president or a senior vice president and explaining where they are in this as being an exhausted hero. And they look ahead and they say, but I can't give up my individual contributor stuff. I'm not allowed to do this. So many people are making choices because they just don't know what's possible. The great leaders in organizations that I have met and that are in all of the studies are those that are able to change their job, not just add to their job. I think there's a belief that as you continue to grow up the food chain, you continue to just take on more and more and more, but your job actually needs to change. You've got to focus on delegation and getting the work to the right people to do it. And you've got to spend more time on that strategy and influencing change proactively instead of reactively. And so many people just don't even know that that's what the new expectation is.
That's so good. Because I think all of us have been in that situation where we've started to move into that leadership role. We've gotten more strategic. And really what you're talking to a cognitive psychologist here. So I go immediately to like, what does that do to your mind? And thinking about the details of being correct and QAing something and executing to a deadline is such a different way of thinking than trying to be strategic and creative and invent something out of nothing. And yet we wonder, why is this hard? Like, why are we struggling? Why are we not able to do this so well? It must be something wrong with me. I must be ineffective. I must not be that good.
Why are all these fires continuing to be set around me? I can't understand why everything is so reactionary. And the main reason why is you're not doing your job as a leader. Oh. So a metaphor that I use often is when you think about a fire, let's say a building is on fire. When the fire department shows up, it's not an emergency to them. Like they've planned for it. And the first thing that happens is the fire chief gets out and they set up a command post. And that command post, the fire chief directs the firefighters of where to go. And they're continuing to direct them throughout the process because they can see the whole fire from the outside and they can get communications from inside and they can direct people to put out the fire. So many fire chiefs in corporate America are running into the fire with their teams. Follow me, watch me. We're going to do this together. And in doing that, the fire continues to burn and set new fires around them because nobody is watching the big picture. And I think it's not just, okay, you need to be a big picture strategy thinker. It's also the realization you can't go into the fire. The moment you go into the fire, your team is now lost great vision of how to actually put it out. And so I often am helping people see with this model, if you're the exhausted hero, you're the fire chief that's running into the fire and the fire continues to burn. If you are a strategic manager, a strategic leader, you're the person who's standing outside the fire, directing the firefighters to put it out. And even more, you're the person who's analyzing, how does this fire never get set again?
Oh, that's good.
But you can't do that if you're in the fire.
No. Oh, that's so good. It's such a great, and I love analogies, and it's such a great analogy of the perspective that you need to have as a leader. I'm hearing a couple of so far really tactical things. Like you said something, a few minutes ago around, we make these choices, and, what I'm hearing with the choices that we're making is they're largely based on unchecked assumptions. I have to keep doing my individual contributor role because this is what's required. And their boss is like, no, it isn't. What are you doing? It's an unchecked assumption. We take it as though it's true, and we march ahead as though those are the rules. So that's one thing I heard. The second thing I heard is this idea of starting to delegate and truly, taking the position of helping your team take on those tasks to do versus doing them yourself. What are other things that you see people either doing or not doing that keeps them in that exhausted center position, or even in an exhausted role that might be imbalanced in some of the, intersections between two of those circles?
Yeah. When I think about the leader role, there are three key behaviors I put in the leader role: creating a vision, influencing change, and coaching others. Those three things as a leader are ways that you're getting proactive, you're getting ahead of the game, and you are leading people to a new path. With individual contributors, the three behaviors are driving results yourself, learning or teaching others something, and truly becoming a technical expert. So what I often do is I'm coaching executives who are moving from that exhausted hero into that strategic manager or even visionary role, is really say, what are those things in that individual contributor that you need to stop doing? You are the technical expert. Okay, how do we get somebody else on your team to be the technical expert? How do you spend 3 months training them so you don't have to be that anymore? You are leading all the training classes. Somebody else could do that once they become a technical expert. And drive results. What tasks are assigned to you that you can give to somebody else? So there's an aspect of understanding how those behaviors are playing into your time, because the new time needs to be strategy, creating a vision, influencing change, building strong relationships, understanding what changes is coming and how do you get your team ready for it, and truly coaching your team instead of directing your team, helping your team think through things. So we spend a lot of time saying, how are you measuring the amount of time you're doing on those 6 behaviors? And how do we make a shift? How do we get rid of some of those behaviors that are individual contributor? And how do we add on some of those other behaviors that are needed to be a leader? And so many of those are spare time to these individuals. That's what I'm finding is, I create vision all the time. Awesome. How much did you spend on that this week? Well, I went to a conference back in May.
Oh.
And they're not making it part of every day. How are you influencing change? Are you meeting with your peers? Not really. How often do you meet with your team? Once a week. There isn't this aspect of how are they building relationships to truly influence things to go forward. And so we spend a lot of time understanding truly what those roles are. Those are big mistakes that people are making, is they're too stuck in what they know and not building in the new skills of what they need to learn and gain.
I had just a light bulb moment go off as you were describing the even just the piece around influencing change, the degree to which you need to be meeting and collaborating with other people, having deep conversations, sitting and thinking about these larger, more complex problems. What I can imagine is happening inside people's minds is exactly what happened in mine. And I think you're going to start laughing and say, duh, that's the point. Is when I hear this, I think, but that takes so much time to have all those conversations. And I would imagine you're thinking, well, duh, that's the point. That's why you can't do it well if you don't get rid of all this other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're all exhausted, right? We're trying to, like, multitasking is on steroids right now. We're trying to do so many things that we're not doing any of them well. And so we feel like we're doing these things by checking them off the list, but we're not actually doing these things to truly be ahead and influence, to truly create a strategy, go forward. Those things aren't happening. Coaching our team, we're giving our team, we're driving by, we're sending them a quick chat on online. Hey, can you go get this done? And we're considering that coaching. We need to help people think. And that's really what coaching is.
That's so good. It feels like there is also an opportunity. Half the stuff that we do on this podcast is very psychology focused. Half the stuff that we do on this podcast is very life design focused. And it feels like there's an element of life design here in knowing which end of that continuum you truly want to be on. And I think back to, and I don't know if she listens to this podcast, so I'm not going to say her by name, but if you are a listening person who was on my team at Target, who knows yourself extremely well, hi, I hope you're doing great. So someone who was on my team, earlier in my career, she had this incredible self-awareness to know, I don't want to be in that strategic position. That's not where I enjoy being. And I excel in this deep subject matter expertise, like deep to the point that no one knew these concepts better than her.
Yes.
And she was such an asset to every strategic conversation because she could see problems and weak points and detail where no one else could. I don't know that everyone has that level of self-awareness right out of the gate to know which end of that continuum they want to move toward.
Totally. I think when you say that, the word that's coming to my mind is, with self-awareness, there's clarity. And that clarity creates this confidence and this strength. And when I think about the exhausted hero trying to do it all, there isn't that clarity. So whether you decide, I just want to be an individual contributor, there's clarity. When you decide that I want to be a great manager or really be a great visionary leader, there's clarity in that. And I think there's a piece of that exhausted hero of, I don't know what I truly want, and therefore I'm trying to do it all, and I'm probably not doing any of it well. And so in my book, there's a lot around, you have choices of which of these roles you choose. And here are the benefits of being in each one of these roles. How do you identify not only where your career currently is, but where you intentionally are moving your career to find the clarity you need within your career path?
I love it so much. I'm glad you brought up your book. Can you give us the official title of your book so that people know what to Google when they're like, yes, this is me. Oh my God, I need help.
Yeah,
felt.
It's called Rescuing the Corporate Exhausted Hero. It's available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Target.com. My last name is Heydt, Hey, D as in dog, T as in Tom. And so you can search by that as well. But what I'm so proud about the book is it's not just illustrating an idea. There's a lot of actionable things of, if you want to move to another level, here's some different tactics or ideas or ways to build the skills that you need to move to another level. There's also a lot in there about how to have a conversation with your boss around this. It's a great conversation starter with your boss to bring out this model and say, I think I'm here. Where am I supposed to be? Where do you see me? And where do you see me going to? And how do we build a plan around that? And so there's a lot in the book around that as well. So yeah, you can check it out at any point in time. Rescuing the Corporate Exhausted Hero.
Amazing. We'll make sure that we link to that on your show notes page, and then also in this episode description. So if you're listening to this right now, I know these Friday episodes are really short and sweet and to the point, and there are so many places that we could dig in. It's actually painful not to. But I'll make sure that we've got that link in there so that you can just swipe up on whatever device you're on, go right to that book and be able to get a copy for yourself, because the real value comes in figuring out how to do this. How do we start to turn the Titanic, make the shift in our own career? And I know there's such value and such action inside that book about how to do just that.
Awesome. Thank you.
As we close out this quick and impactful episode, what's something that you want every emerging leader to know? Like, what is something that you feel like if you could just shout from the rooftops to every person who's moving into that more strategic or visionary role, what's something that you want them to know taking away from this?
I think they have a choice. They have choices in their everyday life that are creating the space that they are now working in. And I think it's okay to ask your boss about those choices. It's okay to have a conversation about, this is how my job is going. What should it become? Not from a standpoint of, I think so many people feel like that opens up such a horrible conversation with their boss. And I think their boss, 80% of bosses want them to be successful, right? We want these people to stick around and be successful. So having a question about the choices you have in front of you out of curiosity can really open up a lot of great opportunities for you in the future that you don't have to feel so stuck. So you have choices. Ask about those choices.
This was so good. I love it so much. Can you give us a really quick one more URL? Tell us where we can find you online if people want to learn more from you or learn more about what you do for organizations.
Yeah, if you go to gameplanleader.com, you can see all about my business. You can order my book from there. You can schedule 30 minutes with me, but also you can find all my stuff on Instagram and Facebook through that URL as well. I post a lot of weekly challenges to managers out on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So definitely find me there, but you can find me starting at gameplanleader.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I was so excited when we first met. I felt like everything you were saying, all I had in mind was this audience who listens to these Friday episodes. I'm like, oh, they need to hear this because this is such a beautiful way of summing up the experience that we all have, and also a way for us to plan accordingly and move in a direction that feels better and feels more aligned to what we want our career to be. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, April. It's been great chatting with you, and you're just such a great expert in this world. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me for this professional edition of the Building Psych Strength podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or a business professional and you're interested in becoming more successful, hit the subscribe button. And until next week, be strong, be resilient, and be successful.